Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ariel Rivka Dance post-performance panel. We are thrilled as the Gershman Philadelphia Jewish Film Festival to present this event in conjunction with the virtual premiere of Unorthodox and the Ariel Rivka Dance performance workshop. Thanks everyone for joining us. My name is Olivia Ansis. I'm the Executive Artistic Director of the Gershman Philadelphia Jewish Film Festival. And I'm just here for a moment. I'm here to introduce our panel's moderator. Rabbi Mira Rivera received ordination at the Jewish Theological Seminary with an MA in Jewish Studies. She is Associate Rabbi and Board Certified Chaplain at Kehilat Romemu I probably butchered that, so you can fix it after I'm done, in New York City, and at Ammud, the Jews of Color Academy. Before seminary, she danced with the Martha Graham Dance Company, an ensemble under artistic director Yuriko Kikuchi, and studied with ballet master Gabriella Tobe Darvish. As teaching artist for National Dance Institute, she reached hundreds of public school children in New York City. In the middle of a performing career and raising a family, she earned a BFA in film from New York University. Welcome, Rabbi Mira Rivera, and take it away.
Thank you, everyone. Just seeing the dance, I remembered standing once before Martha Graham, and we were sweating. We had just done one of her pieces called Celebration, and she looked at us and she said, "I'm jealous. I envy you." And I had that feeling of envy. I wanted to do the movement myself. But anyway, welcome. It is such a pleasure to be here, and great responsibility, I think, that you have taken on upon yourselves as Nebi'ah, as prophets, like Miriam, who took the timbrel. They say a timbrel, but it says toph in the Jewish, in our text. When I think of toph, it's like these gigantic drums, rather than, a little tambourine with ribbons hanging, pretty ribbons. She took a big, gigantic drum. So, and I think that's what you do with a dance. And let's start with just thinking, asking you about the dance. So it was written about Unorthodox that the question was, what happens when you unzip the dress to breathe? Right? We have these polite, especially women, simple, polite versions of ourselves we often portray to the world. So what happens when you, as dancer, woman, choreographer, citizen, any of those, what happens to you as any of those aspects of you when you unzip the polite version of yourself in your dance and in your life? So I would like to invite Ariel first. We'll go in alphabetical order, and I'll mute myself. I will mute.
Thank you, Rabbi Mira. I'm Ariel Grossman, the Artistic Director of Ariel Rivka Dance, and I'm choreographed Unorthodox. I have Hana Tirosh here, as well as Danita Shaheen, who have been with me for a very long time, I think between 8 and 10 years. And it was really interesting, actually, watching the workshop with Danita, because I think what I've been trying to do as a choreographer is, tell my story, talk about with them, spend time talking and sharing verbally, not only physically, what the feeling is, and then giving it to them and having their own physical and emotional experience inform the piece. But what happens to me when I unzip? Well, it's funny because me, everybody who knows me, I'm pretty unzipped most of the time, but there's a lot more unzipping that could happen. And I think like more recently, especially in this pandemic with my children, I feel like I'm constantly keeping it together and trying to be so thoughtful and putting so much into my responses and not letting them see the behind the scenes of all the questions I'm asking myself and how I really want to respond sometimes, which is just leave me alone, go away, I don't care. You know, obviously not all the time I'm like that, but you know, I think we have to surround ourselves in communities, either very intimate ones or greater ones, where you feel like you can be your true self. Um, but you have to be articulate in how you do that, because you're not going to necessarily get anywhere if you just scream and say, I'm angry because of this. You have to really be thoughtful in how you approach the nuance of what's happening in the unzipped world, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And yes, being a mother and being teacher now too, right? Because you have to do homeschooling and everything else that you need to do with your life. Hana.
Thank you, Rabbi Mira. It's really great to be here, and thank you, Ariel, for this opportunity. So for me in the dance, the unzipping is incredibly liberating because the opening part of the dance is so tense and so precise, and we have to be so together, and you know, one little mistake, it would really show. And so I think, you know, I feel physically very zipped up and it's hard to breathe in that opening part. And when we start to let that out and move our body, it just feels incredible. So even though there's a rawness and kind of a dark, you know, unleashing within the theme of the piece, like just physically speaking as a dancer, it feels just beautiful to breathe and to open my ribs and, you know, to sort of move our arms and use our full bodies. And then I would say, so I'm also a mom. I have 3 kids, 3 and under. So that is an adventure. But I would say in unzipping, it's sort of this idea of extremes, that it could be extreme vulnerability, it could be extreme beauty, learning something about yourself, or like a moment of kindness or empathy that maybe goes beyond social norms. It could also be scary, like your angry side or your rageful side or just ugly crying. But, you know, I would say it's not just positive and it's not just negative, which I guess all of us are also not just positive or just negative as human beings. And so I think, you know, that's sort of what's interesting about, you know, when you let your insides out.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Hana. And Danita. Well, Danita, you shared a lot of the dance students. So we didn't just see you in the piece, but you taught. So it's a lot of opening there.
Yes, thank you so much, Rabbi Mira, and thank you again for having us. This is such an awesome opportunity. And yeah, there's a lot of unzipping happening in that workshop for sure. And I definitely feel in this piece and in life, just that action of unzipping. It's uncomfortable, you know, it's scary. What comes out might be ugly, you know, it might not be exactly what you want to let out to the world, which is why we keep it zipped up, right? But when you get past that, then you get to that breath and you can enjoy letting people into what is actually inside of you. So I agree with a lot of what Hana said, and I feel completely the same in this piece. You know, it's about letting out those insides, which, you know, might not always be what the audience wants to see. It might not be what the person you're interacting wants to see, but that's what you feel inside. So that's how I feel about it.
And I guess even the way you were teaching, like you structured the class, there was a, you know, everybody started from like a center and then the, going out, the lunges, and then the back and the lunge, then accompanying it with the undulation of the body, then the throw, and then the disengaging, like the real dégagé, that kind of thing, that kind of movement was, like you feel like gradual opening, right? And gradual unlayering of the pieces. Ariel is nodding, and so even to the choreographer, I want to ask, like, was there an incident? Was there a particular moment or a verb, like even a verb that birthed this piece?
To be honest, I don't remember, but I did read the book Unorthodox, which the mini series that was just on Netflix, I think it was Netflix, just released, and I watched the mini series and thought it was incredible and extremely well done. And I was really inspired by that, and how there's a bravery in being that vulnerable and letting go, that I do think I've always had, but it hasn't felt like a choice to me. It was just sort of how I needed to be. And as I've grown up, I've learned that for a lot of people, it does take a lot of bravery and confidence to be that honest, because there's a fear of how it's going to be received. And I also think internally, and this is something that I work on with students that I teach and with my own children, the experience of going to that horrible place or that deep release, and then watching yourself recover from that and knowing that you're going to recover from that. And I think that I remember feeling like I had to keep it all together, because once you let it go, it's out there and you're never going to be able to come back. But I think that's a very young fear, and you have to learn how to recover, because you have to be able to let it go, and you have to trust yourself. And I do think that, one of the reasons why I feel like I can get that across so quickly with the dancers is because I enter the space in a very vulnerable place, and they immediately open themselves up to me. But that was something that they had to commit to from the very first time we started working together. But in this piece particularly, it was a real shift from what we had been doing. It was a much more like, no, I don't want you to try to be pretty. Stop trying to make that move pretty. Be ugly. Actually, make this the ugliest thing you've ever done. And we had faces involved and all this, and we went backwards a little bit. We honed what it was going to be, but I think that was hard, like letting go of the ideas of how they wanted to look, and really letting it come from the inside as deeply as possible.
And particularly since you're wearing masks, right? So, but the body doesn't lie, but even then, right? The masks really, in many ways, keep you zipped, right? So suddenly it's just the body really doing the emoting. A question from a couple of questions. One is from Darcy. Did all of you, the dancers, watch Unorthodox, the film, and or read the book? And how did it mark you? How did it impact your dance? Hana or Danita, unmute. Okay, Hana.
So I did watch the series. I did not read the book. But I think, something that struck me in the series is that, from the outside, we have our lens of thinking these things are very esoteric, or strange or really mannered. And for that community, when you grow up in that community, it's actually just normal. You don't necessarily question it. It's what you've grown up with. It's what everybody believes. As a woman, it's what your mother believes and wants for her daughter. And so, you know, as much as we from our outside lens can say, you know, this is odd, or this is oppressive, or this must be difficult. I mean, maybe it's not. Many Orthodox women are very happy in their reality. And also, I think the other interesting thing is just some of the fear of stepping out, that, you know, we can have this sense of, oh, this is someone escaping oppression, but it's so much more complex than that. And there is this fear of leaving behind the familiar and leaving behind your community and entering into a world where actually for you, the rules and social norms in the outside world are actually really strange and maybe don't make sense and maybe seem arbitrary. So I think sort of that complexity and being aware of myself as having a lens as an outsider, and to try to think and embody and feel what the nuance of being inside that world.
Thank you. Thank you, Hana. And Danita.
So I did not read the book or watch the series, but I certainly will. I'm sorry, I did not do my homework.
Amen, amen, amen. But it's also, you know, being women together, dancing together. You do, like, you absorb from each other, right? You do absorb from each other, so much so that our cycles become sync, right? In sync when we are, you know, when we are together. Like we become attuned to the moon and what that does to our bodies. A question from Olivia is, can you talk about the use of the boots? I noticed that too. I thought, note to self, ask about the boots and the black masks. Anyone?
Okay, Danita, go ahead. Okay. So it was not intended to be a film, and it was not intended to be outside, and it was not intended to be during a pandemic. So when we weren't able to premiere it on a stage, we really thought about what is the best way to make this happen, and really safety. It's interesting because I do think aesthetically it works to our advantage greatly, but it really was about safety. Number one, they were going to wear masks, and number two, they were outside. There was not a dance floor. They could not be barefoot, and they needed to wear shoes. What kind of shoes would really speak to the work? Maybe Danita, you can talk a little bit about what it was like to dance in those shoes, because that's not something we ever do in our work.
Absolutely. And when we were even talking about what kind of shoe would work, you know, it was pretty clear to all of us that like just wearing sneakers that we already own doesn't really go along with the piece. Wearing socks wasn't safe enough. So the boots kind of worked for the piece more. And it definitely was a challenge to dance in these shoes, especially because we never wear shoes in Ariel's work ever. And most of us are modern dancers or contemporary dancers, so we typically don't wear shoes when we're dancing just in general. But it's just a different articulation of the foot, so you don't get that same extension of the ankle. You don't get the same feeling of that texture on the floor. You can't slide the same way that you normally can. But on the other regard, there's other things that you can do. So even in those walks in the beginning, you can take those even heavier because you have a sole to kind of comfort the foot on. There's moments where you can go over your toe where maybe that's not a great idea if you're barefoot, you know, but it was a challenge, but in the end, it became just another tool, another prop that you could use in the piece to articulate the message that we're trying to convey. So it ended up being kind of fun to dance in the boots.
Thanks, Danita. And Gloria wanted to know what was the site? Where was it filmed?
So we were on the rooftop of the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which is actually, you know, sometimes it's a wedding venue or it's a photography studio. But it was really great, you know, to find a safe, out of the way location where people wouldn't be wandering through. But that actually, you know, had that beautiful vista and the background and kind of the industrial look. You know, it ended up really fitting the theme of the piece. So it's a great venue. Check it out.
And when Ariel and I were just going back and forth about the dance, I remember telling Ariel I wanted to see the piece again, not in Dropbox. I wanted to see it as part of the presentation of the festival. So there's a kind of a sheen, a kind of, you know, finished element of it. And although, of course, like you and I know that there's a lot of charm and beauty in rehearsal, but thinking of when I first saw it, like when you invited me in the summer, and everything that happened between then and now, what our country has gone through, for me becomes part of the dance, right? It becomes part of the dance. The boots really made me gulp. The background and the smokestacks, right? And the ritualistic entrance of the women, so much like entrances we did in Graham. Steps on the street, totally Graham, right? Instead of flat hands, we would cup our hands, right? But definitely this such proximity that you can feel the person right next to you, and then breaking out from that. So like the whole mise en scène and the times that we live in now, you know, makes this woman's voice totally unorthodox. And let's see, as the composer, Stefania, I'd like you to pronounce the last name because I don't want to butcher it. As the composer, Stefania would love to know more about the Klezmer-ish aspect and the non-Klezmer-ish sounds. How did that affect the work and your performances?
Stefania de Kennessey, she is a brilliant composer, and this is our 4th or 5th collaboration together. And she's just incredibly inspiring and really listens. I think that's probably one of the best quality, that we're able to really listen to each other and there's no ego involved. So, I mean, not from her, maybe there's ego from me. But I'm glad she asked that, because that the Klezmer music is actually what first inspired me to create the piece. I mean, I listen, you know, when you go to weddings, you hear the Klezmer music, and it makes me want to move. It always makes me want to move in this like bouncing way. And I just had this idea, like, let's put it on and go. And I remember Casey O'Kane, who's one of the other dancers, she was like, I can tell this music is really inspiring you. You just need to keep going in this direction. And we were playing like Hava Nagila or something. And I knew that I didn't want the piece to be joyful, and I didn't want it to be a celebration. And that music has this like, it is celebratory, but it is also still depressing a little bit. All of that music, it's like heavy. There's a lot to it. So I said to Stefania, I'd really love you to take this Klezmer theme and make it dark. And, you know, the other thing about Klezmer music I find is it just doesn't stop. The beat doesn't stop. Da, da, da. So she went with that, but then there are also these moments where I needed it to go away, because if you do it for too long, the dynamic doesn't change. But once we got the piece, once there were a lot of back and forth, this is too happy, Stefania. No. And I remember we were in the studio and we put it on, we were like, yes, this is it. Yeah, I think we have a lot of other questions. Otherwise, I would put this over to the dancers to answer.
Okay, so let's go to the other questions. So from Amy Stratton to all of you, taking safety into consideration, do you feel like the message intended to be shown was amplified because of the adjustments you had to make? And for the dancers, do you feel like this challenge helped you grow as a performer artist? And we had a little piece of that, with beginning with the shoes from down up, right? And even no Marley up.
So I absolutely feel like the message and also the internal experience was amplified because we were unzipping ourselves out of quarantine. And this was actually the first time that we came back together in person. And there were a lot of discussions and back and forth about, what does each person need to feel safe? What does each person need to feel safe, even asserting what they need or what they're comfortable with? And, sort of having to clear the air. I mean, I actually had the virus when we went to the hospital to have our twins. And so, I felt I had to clear the air and say, I know that I have antibodies and some people behave recklessly when they have antibodies. And I just want you guys to know that I'm still careful. But just these considerations of things we had to share with each other that we wouldn't usually think about. We would just come to the studio and dance and sweat together and touch each other, adjusting it so that, two of us were comfortable partnering and two of us really not. And so that changed the structure. But then, there's something really kind of mesmerizing about that dichotomy of when are you physical, how much is touch allowed in that culture, how much is touch allowed in cultures in general. And so I think also then just from the inside, we're all a little bit deconditioned, a little bit out of shape. And then when you add a mask, it gets a lot harder to breathe. And that piece, as I'm sure you can probably tell, is pretty athletic. And so the struggle and the rawness of almost wanting to like gasp and scream and rip off the mask by the end because you're hoping you'll get through it, I think probably added a certain emotional quality that tamped up the emotion in the performance of it.
Well, I really feel for you. I really feel that, right? So thank goodness it had to be filmed, right? So you could have several takes and you filmed pieces of it. Ariel?
We did do 2 full takes of the piece. And then we did take, and I was like, can we run it again? And they were all like, we can't. And also, I mean, not only were they wearing masks and boots, which were heavy on a floor, on a surface that's not a dance surface that they had never danced on before, but we haven't been rehearsing regularly in the same capacity. Typically if we have a performance, we're running the pieces 3 or 4 times, a few times a week before a show, and jumping and doing all this stuff and in like the best shape of your life before a performance. And I think a lot of them were worried because although they've been taking class and been trying to be as active as possible, it's not the same as when you're, living your regular life as a dancer. It's an athletic sport.
So I'm going to give in to the question that I said, okay, I won't ask this one, right? When dancers come together ad nauseum, right? My husband is here just listening, like the hours and the hours and hours of our partners and our friends and family having to listen to us talk about technique. So during this pandemic, how are you able to keep up your technique? Or what techniques are you able to do to keep training?
Well, I think that creativity is key right now, especially dancing in your house, which, unless you're really lucky and have a sprung floor and Marley at your access, it's probably not ideal. If you live in a house like mine, your floor does this. So there's a lot of taking care of how differently you need to warm up your feet just to dance on an uneven surface. What other exercises do you need to do just to make sure that your body is in shape to dance in not ideal conditions. So instead of taking full ballet classes and contemporary classes several times a week, I've been doing a lot more conditioning and focusing more on different aspects of class and trying to figure out how can I keep that part of my training strong without overdoing it, because I don't have the accessibility to do it. So how do I incorporate Pilates into it? How do I incorporate other forms of resistance training into it? What kind of tools do I have at my house that I can implement to make sure that my body stays strong? And how do you keep that endurance? What else can I do? Can I go for a bike ride instead, taking long walks, like run up and down your staircase a million times? Like, what else can you do to make sure that you can stay physically active in an unideal situation? So for me personally, it's been a very creative process. I can't say that I've mastered it yet, but it's going, it's happening.
Thank you. And Olivia has to let me know how much time we have, but please, Hana, for you.
Sure. So I would say for me, a primary benefit has been the opportunity to do more training and more cross training, because I do think in our normal life, we're rehearsing quite a lot, we're teaching quite a lot, we're commuting amongst the 5 boroughs quite a lot. And so, when you take a lot of that time out, I was definitely able to do some cross training a bit more. I'm not usually super diligent about that. I usually just do a lot of ballet. And so for me, I had had a very complicated C-section with my first child, and my core never really healed from that. And I've been having a lot of back problems since then. And I still have back problems because I also have 6-month-old twins. But I would say that with the added cross training, I have been able to get quite a lot of my pain under control. And so while cardiovascularly, I'm not nearly in the condition that I would usually choose to be in, I do think muscularly, I'm perhaps a little bit stronger, a little bit more centered, a little bit more efficient. So I'll definitely take that as a silver lining.
Amen. Ariel, would you like to illuminate us on your process?
I mean, personally, I also had a lot of back problems after my second child. And through this, like, we're living with my parents in Long Island. And one of the benefits is that they are able to, like, I have somebody watching them when they're not in school for like 90 minutes a day at least, so that I can do Pilates, which I do every day. And I do yoga, and I do a ballet class with the dancers twice a week. And I also started doing some like actual cardio fitness. And I think that's really good for me. And I try to do walking also. But I think the Pilates has really been the biggest help for me. Connected NYC. It's amazing.
A question from Phyllis Benjamin. What was back to the music, right? Back to music, and what was the process of coordinating choreography with the music? Was it music first, choreography, matched? That's my question. But Phyllis's question is, what was the process of coordinating choreography with music?
We started with like Hava Nagila. Was it Hava Nagila, or it was like some other piece? I forget what it was. It was something like that. I think I Googled like Klezmer music, bar mitzvah music or something, and was just playing that, and really just used that that meter to create a good amount of the dance. I would say like 3 or 4 minutes of it before Stefania came in. She can text if I'm wrong about that. And she came and watched, and then she wrote about 3 or 4 minutes. And then she really felt like she needed me to finish the piece, because she didn't really understand how the arc was going, because it was very sort of like in one direction. And I really didn't know how it was going to go. And I sort of felt like, oh, I kind of wish I had the music. Oh, right. Then I used bolero. That's right. I put the bolero in because the bolero was much more intense and depressing than the klezmer, but it had that drive. So we used that. That's right. And that really helped me, I think, finish the piece. And then when Stefania, she wrote a lot. She came in, we said, this is great. Oh, this part here, I don't like it. We went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then once her piece was finished, I mean, even usually once a piece is on stage, it's out of my hands. I don't feel like it's mine anymore as much. Like I actually, like I watch it and I enjoy it. Before that, I'm still looking at what I can edit, what needs to be fixed. So I would say even in this last filming, I was still making changes and hearing differences in the music that I wanted to enhance. But it was definitely a dance first and then music situation. Although the music did really inspire the movement, just not this particular piece. But I think she did an amazing job making it like klezmer, having a real Jewish feel to it. I don't know if other people think that, but I really feel like it has this big Jewish feeling to it.
A definite sense of folk, of music that makes you do things together, right? Rather than like a lot of contemporary music for modern dance. Sometimes it's just kind of like amorphous or drone, just kind of keep counting, keep counting rather than something with with something a meter that you can hold on to. And let's see, any more questions? Okay, this is what's been going on in my mind. So we're talking about the things that you do regularly, right? It's Pilates, suddenly like cross training, ballet twice a week. And there's something really for a practice that's regular, right? Whether you swap one for the other. And so one of the things that I do as my rabbinical work for Romemu is I have a prayer service every morning. We call it a morning minyan. So people log on at 7:30 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time, 8:30 on a Sunday. And it's pretty much the same order of prayers. And there's been like such discipline also, and the coming into the medium each day for me. And one of the prayers in that morning service have these words, right? It goes, so I'll sing it. It goes like this. I'll chant it. Hapak tamispadi limacholi petakta sakibit azreini simcha למען יזמך הכבוד ולא ידום, השם אלוהי לעולם עודך. It says, you have turned my mourning, mourning, to a dance. You have loosened my sackcloth, because when people mourned, they wore these shapeless clothing. So you have loosened my sackcloth and girded me, like belted me with joy, so that my soul sings to you and is not silent. So these verses come to me, and it comes at a point in the service when now we're about to enter what we call the verses of song, Pesukei de Zimbra, just verse after verse of psalms and song. So like that was like the one saying that kind of like accompanied me through this project with you, from the time we met in the summer. So if there would be a song or a protest, like I'm thinking Amazing Grace, or a chant on the streets that kind of powers you these days, what would that be?
That is definitely a tough question, and I apologize for my cat who wants to be a part of this conversation. Um, I think it depends on the day and at what point in time in this pandemic we are thinking about or whatnot. But I think that one of the songs that's been inspiring me is Rise Above by Black Flag, just kind of angry at what's happening and wanting it, knowing you're going to get over it and knowing that times were past. But I don't know, right now I'm into These Boots Are Made for Walking is where I'm at right now in my life.
So, to get my first son to eat, we had sort of a lullaby rotation. And as long as you kept singing without a break, he would keep eating. But so now I've been singing to the twins those songs as well. But one of them is Lean on Me. And anytime you sing Lean on Me, anybody who's within the house or within the room or within earshot definitely joins in. It's one of those songs you can't just hear and not sing. And so for me, that's been a big anthem during this time.
I hear you.
I mean, so many things. Well, one of the things I don't have I will get to the anthem thing, but the idea of prayer and the dedication and the commitment that you're talking about every day, for me, that's ballet. That's the bar. That's your meditation. And I'm always surprised at how soothing and beautiful and inspired I am to do a tandu. Like it, and I'm still learning every day how to do that. And you come back to it and you come back to it. And it is interesting as adults to return to this movement that you've been doing my whole life, like for over 30 years. And not to be angry at myself for not knowing how to do it, or that there's still to learn from it, but that it's exciting and it's inspiring. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Okay, you're killing me. You really are. It's like my conscience. Here's my conscience. 1, 2, 3. And Olivia
Well,
here
you are welcome to come to our ballet classes any Tuesday or Friday. We will send you the Zoom link. You can turn your video off so we don't have to see you.
My husband is here. He's a music director for National Dance Institute, and so thumbs up. And I just want to echo, like, ballet. Through my pregnancies, it was the one constant. And when I was not in class, that's when they said for my first for Ariel, for my daughter, when I was not in class, they said she's in labor. And I was in labor. I didn't show up to class. I was in labor. And the constants also, and the humility. I feel you. I hear you when you say the utter humility of coming back to class after, let's say, not taking class, or after twins, or after one. It's, and I would see myself in the mirror and tell myself, you know what? You are here. No judgment. You showed up. You are here. So I asked you what music, what song somehow fuels you. So the other thing I would like to ask is, in the dance, in Unorthodox, is there a movement or a sequence, a simple sequence of movement that you might be able to describe to us that to you was utterly delicious? You got to that part and you go, yum.
So there's a part that occurs several times, but we push our face and then we sort of take our mask off, and then that leads to this really amazing release. And I think it's that release moment, even though in the beginning, you know, it happens just for a minute and then we're buttoned back up. And then as we get more open, it's like the release becomes the big part of it and the gesture part is smaller. And so I think just that opening is a really delicious and meaningful part for me.
Thanks, Hana.
For me, it's this movement where you kind of throw your arm down and lift the knee up, and then it's another throw up towards the sky after that. And for me, it's kind of getting the exoskeleton off of you, just like unpeeling the layers and finding that freedom to find your breath, like that unzipping, you know, violent unzipping, but that release, the struggle in the release. And we get to do it in various intensities throughout the piece. So every time you do it, it kind of has a different feel to it. And I love every single time we do it because it feels different every single time you do it.
Thank you, Danita. And a choreographer, the choreographer was also doing the dance. Which part?
Well, I didn't perform it. I can't do that.
Okay.
But I would say the two movements are like when you're just like coming in and your whole body is just like enveloping itself. And then the other part that I really love is when they are like they keep like reaching out like this from their body. So like their body's like pushing it away. So you're sort of rejecting yourself, but also rejecting this otherness.
Okay, thank you. Yes. There was a lot of work with the skirt, and even during the dance workshop, Danita said, if you've got a skirt, go grab it right now. So somebody tell me about the work with the skirt, because that's like so Martha, like we had skirts.
Okay, well, I'll say, so I'm usually like a very simple, okay, not simple, but like I want it to be about the dance. And when we started this, I think Hana was like, you know, why don't you like use the skirt? Like, I feel like it could be interesting because I think early on I said I want you guys to wear long skirts. I think that would be interesting. And then they started playing with it a little bit, and I was hesitant to go into it more. But as they did it, and we really experimented with what they could do, it just, you know, it gave a physical covering, you know, to hide yourself. Sometimes you just need to do that. Sometimes you want to just throw it, stretch it. I think it like was able to demonstrate the tension and the release of that tension in a tangible way, that sort of enhanced the movement. It was tricky though. I mean, there are some parts where they're getting caught in the skirts, and especially with the boots, you know, the boots and the skirts together. And then with the mask, like you can't see as well as you normally would, I think, also because it's this other thing. But I think I'm really happy with how it came out. I do feel like it was my vision, the way everything came together. And actually one of our the costume designer who we work with, Mariana, she had created skirts. She hadn't finished them, but they were going to be wearing them in our NYU season in this past May. But I didn't want to wear them for this because they would get really ruined. And I think it also just made more sense for the film to have it be something really simple. But she did made these beautiful white skirts actually with like a newspaper print on top of it. And I think it's kind of like a turtleneck top. So, and maybe they will be wearing the boots on stage. I don't know. We might not be able to let go of those and the masks. I don't know.
Well, very chic. This whole idea of the turtleneck and the skirts with the newsprint. Very, I think it was John Galliano a long time ago. But anyway, I just want to say thank you. There, for me, the synchronicity of your invite to me. I was filming a little dance piece that we were going to put as part of our, I don't know, one of those high holiday presentations. And you called, and we spoke immediately, and then here we are now. And I just like to say thank you and kol hakavod, and such a work of art. Thank you, Danita Shaheen, for teaching and taking us into those three sections of movement, and Hana Tirosh for being in this panel and for dancing, and also in Unorthodox, and Ariel Grossman for birthing and collaborating with this amazing group of women. Have somebody transcribe everything that you've been saying about the dance. These words should not be lost in the ether and the temporariness of dance, because this is testament to women being powerful. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mira. Thank you so much. This was like truly an honor to have you part of this. Thank you so much.
And Olivia, thank you. And Stefania de Kennessey, thank you so much for that music.
And thank you to the film festival. I can't wait to see the rest of it. It's really incredible stuff you're doing. And I hope that people come and see it, even though it's on the computer. It's easier. People should do it.